Good day, everyone. Richard Cowperthwait for Northwest Access TV. Thanks for joining us. We're continuing with some of our coverage related to Vermont Town Meeting Day, coming up on Tuesday, March 7th, not far away. And we're talking St. Albans Town issues. Today we've got the St. Albans Town Selectboard Chair, Jonathan Giroux. Jonathan, good to see you. And we have the Selectboard Vice Chair, Bryan DesLauriers. Thanks for the time, folks. And again, boy, Town Meeting Day. I should note we're taping this show on Wednesday, February 22nd. Town residents, I guess, should have just gotten their ballots for Town Meeting Day. They've been mailed out to all, I guess, all registered voters.
Some went out starting, they were mailed, I think, on Thursday, so some hit Saturday. I just got mine yesterday, so
Right.
I think by the end of the week, they'll all be.
Well, it sounds like not a lot of towns. The other towns I've checked in Franklin County, maybe there's some other towns doing that, but I don't think in general that's happening. But I think a good idea for the town, obviously, is getting the turnout.
Well, you get the turnout, you know, the people that work that don't get out till 5 o'clock in Burlington. By the time, sometime, you know, if it's snowing out or they pull in, they see the hockey tournament, they say, no, not today. So it's just easier. We get a better turnout, which I think you want the voice of, you know, more people.
Yeah,
So
and I
it's
should
good.
note for the record, Jonathan, you're a candidate for re-election, seeking a 3-year term. David McWilliams challenging you, a former selectman, and a second select board contest in the town. Brendan Deso, incumbent select board member, a former chair, being challenged by David Bray for a 2-year term. So we have 2 select board contests as well. Bryan, so the budget's certainly getting some attention, and almost, $6.2 million budget, and hearing some one of the challengers to one of the incumbents saying budget's too high, shouldn't have been that high. But you want to talk about that? The select board, obviously, I guess, was comfortable with this budget, but it is up.
Well, I wouldn't say the select board was excited about the
I guess I should say
right?
the select board did supports the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. Because last year when we did the budget, that was the first year that I was part of the process. It was much smoother, right? Things kind of went up as you would expect with kind of generally regular percentage increases. This year, there were, when we finally got down and looked in it, it appears to be an almost $1 million increase. On the face of it, it's easy to look at that and say that's way too high, it's out of control. But when you look at its parts, when you look at the where those pieces are coming from, it changes the question a little bit, right, on what we're looking at. For example, $200,000 of it is the DPW equipment fund that the voters passed last year, right? So that automatically shows up as a budget increase for this year. We didn't add it in; it was added last year by the voters, right?
Another big hunk coming out of what's been billed as the historic agreement between the city and town with the police.
So I was going to mention, right? So I think that someone who's been around the town in the city for a long time would see that agreement and agree that this is a good thing for both communities. But it's not free, right? It's not a free agreement. So we need to raise up to $200,000 to have ready to train and get new police officers ready. Doesn't mean we're going to use all that, but we do have to have
with
it
an
ready.
expanded St. Albans Police Department once St. Albans PD takes over and coverage of the town on July 1st, 2024.
Precisely, right? So between those two, that's $400,000, right, of the almost $1 million. It's less than $1 million. Another one that I think is pretty interesting, that it's worth repeating, almost every year on our on almost all town meeting ballots is the question of should we return the leftover money back to the taxpayers to reduce taxes. Well, it's interesting that last year, right, we had $200,000 left over, which we returned. This year we only have $100,000 left over, right? The way that works out on the budget is it's a $100,000 increase, because it's less money that we're able to return compared to last year. Between those 3 items alone, that's $500,000 that show up. We also have increases for recreation, which I've heard more than anything. I've heard people ask, we need to increase recreation budget. Okay, that's one, but that's $25,000, right? Salaries, 4%. On an average raise of about 4%, which I think is very under control, very reasonable. And another 100,000 is health insurance, right? Just to continue the same coverage that we're offering. So if we reduce that, that means we need to cut existing benefits for people. Okay, and another major item I wanted to just touch on here was, sorry about that. I think it was the 50,000 for the Franklin County Sheriffs,
Okay.
just part of our regular contract, right? That leaves over about $100,000 that's left over. That represents the increases of uniforms, new equipment, okay, things like that. That's the increase that I felt like we had control over. So throughout the
And
process.
I'm sure inflation hasn't been a problem for you guys. I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
well,
I'm kidding.
there you go, right? I mean, that's part of it. Now, inflation didn't cause all the increases, okay? As I laid out, most of them are things that are there. If we wanted to cut down the increase, which I would love to do, I'm not sure which one of those things we can or should get rid of. Should we get rid of salary increases? Should we back out of the deal with the city? So that's kind of, as I was looking at its component parts, it makes it easier to understand why it's a big increase. And because we were trying to cut things if we could, or at least slow it down. I feel like we did a great job with that, considering the obstacles we had. But that's kind of an outline of what the increases were.
Okay, so Jonathan, you think that big apparent increase, or the big increase is maybe a little misleading, perhaps? That's kind of
It
why
is until you
parts of-
break it down.
Yeah.
But I mean, because I don't like the big increase either, but it's like I said, and I'll say it again, like, what department or departments are we going to cut to bring the budget down?
Yeah.
Like, you can't really get rid of anything. Like, and even if you start saying, well, we'll take $500 off this line, it's like, well, if we did that, 10 times, whatever, does it really make, to put a department, to handcuff a department, to just not give them that little bit extra so they can, complete the task that they need to complete, I think it isn't beneficial to the town at all.
Yeah.
You know.
That budget was unanimously supported by the select board?
Yeah, not the first round,
Not the
but
first
we
round.
got to where we got because
Yeah.
it was definitely higher. But if anybody followed it through the process, that first meeting, I think everybody's chin hit the table.
Right, as we talked about, some of that coming from, again, what's billed, I think accurately, is the historic agreement between the city and town on the water, wastewater, and policing issues.
Yeah.
You're running into, there are critics to everything out there, but have you run into very little criticism, any about that agreement?
I haven't heard any negative, well, except for one person, but they're negative about pretty near everything.
But not even,
But
not
nothing.
much.
It's usually positive. Everything's positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All
Brian,
positive.
yourself, not much. Again, some folks in the
haven't.
town especially get always leery about getting too close to the city, but that agreement seems to have
I
played pretty well.
haven't heard anything negative. The only, if you want to call it negative, is people saying, kind of like, I'm not sure why we're so excited because we should have done this a long time ago,
Yeah.
right? Why did it take till now? But they're glad it's done,
Yeah.
right? They're glad it's done. And there's a lot of work to do, right? We signed the agreement. It's not all done. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done between, but the framework's there. And the affiliation fee, which will help a lot of our, residents that we currently have, especially the senior citizen residents, right, who really struggle to pay that in future residents and future businesses.
Yeah.
It's going to be huge.
Big issue, obviously, for the town, the search for a new town manager, and that's moving along. Again, we're taping this show on Wednesday, Feb 22nd. Getting fairly close to a decision on that, Jonathan, or?
We have interviews this week,
Well,
I believe, with four candidates.
4 candidates.
And, we started out with 7 total applicants.
Is that right? So just, would you have expected more applicants than that?
I didn't really know how to gauge it.
Yeah.
Like if I would have got one, I was saying okay, because it's a very unique job.
Yeah, I would
Like-
say too, Jonathan, just to interject a little bit.
Yeah.
We had 7 that went through the consulting firm and then came now. So there were more,
So there were
who
more-
applied than that, but those were 7 that made
Okay,
it through
more
that they
applied.
thought we should see.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. John.
Okay.
Okay.
So that town manager job is a unique role. like, for one, your board that you're working for is always usually changing every 2-3 years, you know, so it's just, it's not a job that I would ever want or ever, it's just, there's so many variables, and if you get the wrong board, that's why you see it all over the, you know, in the
I mean, certainly had
papers.
stability. Kerry Johnson will have logged about 10 years or so? Is
Yeah,
that-
yeah.
Boy, and for that, easy to think of St. Albans City with city manager Dominic Cloud, who's been there a long time. That's way longer than the average tenure for a position like that.
Yeah, I think the average is like 5 years or so.
Sounds about right.
3-5 years.
So you're getting pretty close to that.
Yeah, I think so. I think we wanted to be a little further ahead, but as you know, everything in municipal government just seems to take forever. But you're trying, you know, you got people that live, you know, they live a ways away, so you're trying to work around their schedules and everything to get everybody together. And but 24/7 Strategies have done a real good job getting everything together for us. And
Brian, the new town hall working out, you had issues, of course, a belated moving in there with the water issue, but you got a pretty nice new facility at this point.
It's
I finally walked in there yesterday for the first time.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, and again, I've only been on the board for 2 years.
Yeah.
So the first year was at the old town hall, and then recently we've been in the new town hall. It's a little bit of that. I don't remember before moving into town hall a little bit until I think about meetings that we had at the old town hall and the issues there. Very limited bathrooms and. Walking up the grand staircase, which is beautiful, but then thinking how could someone who couldn't walk up on their own even get up there? The town hall solves a lot of that, and it's got a lot of room to grow as well. It's a beautiful building, and I would say if folks haven't been to it yet, I think our open house grand opening is, I believe, this coming Monday, if I'm not mistaken, at 4:30 to 6:30 or something like that.
27?
I believe so.
27, I think
Well, I'll
so.
have to fact check that, but I believe it's this upcoming Monday.
Yeah.
If I'm not, that's what's on my calendar. Anyway.
Interesting. Obviously, you have some
It's on
hope
town.
of doing something with the now former town hall, which may be tough, but obviously nothing
Yeah, I
firm
mean,
right now.
We've had, I think, 1 or 2 meetings where we've, really asked the public to please come and give us ideas or other thoughts about it. And we've got a mix of things that we've heard from people, but nothing has moved forward yet. As Jonathan said, our town does a lot, but we really don't have a huge staff compared to other towns and cities our size. So they get a lot done, but we can't get everything done all at once. So, we needed to move into the new town hall. We needed to get that stuff set. We had the city-town water agreement coming through. So hopefully we'll get back to that soon, with the old town hall, because that's could be a huge resource for someone or some business or for the town, and love to get it doing something other than just sitting there.
Yeah, certainly a year of changes coming up in the town, Jonathan, and with Kerry Johnson retiring as town manager, and just having read your town report, just learning that Harold Bob Cross, longtime fire chief and also public safety director, I guess, is in his last year as well. Another big loss. I mean, another very important person in the town for a long time.
correct, those are going to be some big shoes to fill. Bobby runs a pretty good fire department up there. I think majority of people are happy. I know he's usually understaffed with the volunteers. I think he's right around 24 or so, and he usually likes to be about 30, but I think that's, across the whole region.
Sounds
that
like the
everybody's
town's got
short.
plenty of company in that regard, yeah.
Yeah, so, but yeah, wish him the best of luck, and he ain't, well, he'll still be in the community, so we'll
I
still see
suspect
him
we'll
around.
still see Bob around town, I
Yeah,
trust.
for sure.
So again, the historic agreement between the city and town, which we touched on. Other agreements, might this lead to other agreements with the city? I guess the issue of recreation comes to mind. Of course, a narrow rejection by townspeople a couple of years ago, getting in with the city on the community swimming pool, with the city going, by itself on that. But can you see other areas of agreement?
Yeah, I think the next one you're going to see is probably going to be the fire department.
Yeah.
We share, the way I understand it is we do go to a lot of calls that the city goes to, for mutual aid, because they only have a short staff over there, and the volunteers are at work, so they always, help each other out. And then the rec department, at some point, I'm gonna guess that we're gonna work together with the rec department too. That's the biggest one. Like, I'm a real rec guy. Like, I go up to, now that my son's 8 years old, and we get, he plays soccer and other things, and we go up to Hardack and just to look at all the kids and how much good it does for them. I mean, I think last year there was like 9 or 10 soccer teams from the 7 and 8s. Like, it's amazing. Like, I didn't think it was that big or that popular. And it's a pretty good asset to have to for the town and the city.
Were you disappointed the town didn't join the city on the community swimming pool? Were you a supporter of that?
I support the pool, and I support it weekly.
Yeah.
I don't go, my son goes, but he loves it. He can't get enough of the place.
Yeah.
I was a
Were you
supporter.
disappointed the town didn't jump in with the city on the
Well,
on the pool?
full disclosure,
Yeah.
Richard, at that time of that vote, I was a city resident.
Oh, really?
I was one of the recreation commissioners.
Oh,
In fact,
wow.
I traded off with Paul. So,
Interesting.
and I did that for I think, I don't know, 6-7 years, something like that. So to echo what Jonathan's saying, recreation, I think, is very important, especially when you're up there and you see how many kids and community members it serves. So I'm a little biased in that I worked on the committee to help design the pool and find a location. And
Pretty happy with how that's come out?
yeah, I mean, it was, well, it's amazing when you work on something like that for years, and then to drive by it and see it actually built is something. I voted for the pool, but I did so as a city resident at the time. So that's the way that worked out. The fact that it's there, we have this beautiful resource that, up till right now, every program, it's the same price for a town resident as it is a city resident, with the exception of public swim, which we hope that should be equalized. If the budget passes, that will be equalized for next year, too.
Wanted to talk about some discussion, maybe a bit of controversy about the ideal committee or diversity, equity, inclusivity. But I know former select board member Jessica Frost had some concern about the town's non-involvement, but again, you want to get into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there was some, And
the city, I guess St. Albans City does have
They
whatever the designation of that committee is, and the town does not, although it's talked about it.
Yeah, several cities and towns in Vermont have. Everyone's dealing with these issues as they come up across the state, and there's different ways of dealing with them. St. Albans City, and I know Barry City, and many other places. Their first step, or at least an early step, was to go to a committee, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong. In the town, we didn't do that last year. We had lots of discussions back when Ms. Frost was on the board, along with Ms. Creeley. And I don't think anyone on our board didn't want to tackle these issues. But at that time, we decided not to immediately go to a committee. Fast forward a little bit, we have a new board. Al Vogel, our Director of Operations.
Former select board member.
Former select board member, right? Great person, wealth of knowledge. Came to the board several months ago and wanted us to apply to IDEAL, IDEAL, which is really a state-run program, sponsored or at least encouraged by the governor as well. We agreed at that time to, yes, let's submit an application. Okay. At one of our recent meetings, Al came to present the application, and question number 4, and this is if you were to watch the meeting. Question number 4 was a question saying, if your town is accepted, what will you do? What are your next steps going to be? And the answer as written was, we will start a committee, and we will have one black person, one Asian person, several different groups on there. Okay, it was very, very specific.
That's specific, huh?
Very, very specific. Now, I'm not saying I'm for or against that answer personally, but the reality is by submitting that in without us having talked about it or discussed it, I felt like was out of order or wrong or maybe not even allowed. I don't know if there's a liability that comes from that if we submit an application that says we will do something without us discussing it. I brought that up as an issue, and then lots of discussion went beyond that. Unfortunately, the first round that it was in the paper stated that we were leaving the IDEO program when we were not in fact in it yet.
Not in it.
And then the second round almost seemed like we weren't going to apply, but in fact, if you watch the tape of it, we had tabled our application to do at another time. That was my only issue with the whole application.
So it may be something you may get into down the road, just remains to be seen?
I think we probably will. I think we're at least going to discuss it. I can't speak for everybody.
Sure.
I can speak for myself personally, obviously. And one other issue, if you don't mind, Richard, related to that is I've asked over the last year or so during these discussions, we need to figure out what equity means, right? What does it mean? And unfortunately, I think I didn't explain myself well enough because a lot of people have said, just go Google it. But the issue is, I've been listening and learning about equity for the last several years. So I've listened to a lot of works by Ibrahim Kendi all the way to Jordan Peterson and lots of people in between. The reality is there's no one definition of equity. And then my real question with equity is, what does it mean for a municipality? Like, what can we actually do with that? I want to make sure it's in our purview. For example, big term, creates some passionate thoughts is abortion, right? Well, abortion's an extremely important issue to a lot of people in our town, in every town and city in the United States. But when it comes down to what could our town municipal government do about abortion, all of a sudden the scope becomes much smaller, right? We can't say everyone can, we can't make some huge judgment on it. And not that abortion in dealing with equity, inclusion, and belonging are the same thing. They're not. I'm using that simply as an example. But just to keep in mind, if we're going to look at equity, I just want to make sure it's something that we can do in our municipal government of 20 employees, right? Belonging and inclusion, if we could have this is just me talking, a committee on inclusion and belonging in our town government to make sure zoning is proper and everyone can get to meetings and full transparency, let's do that. Let's do it right now. I don't know how equity fits in yet, but I'm learning.
Jonathan, you want to jump into that at all?
Yeah, so, I believe it was Erin Creeley, past select board member. She created a worksheet of stuff that the town was working on in regards to the equity and inclusion and diversity. And I think we did put that, to the side for a little bit. And we will work on it again soon. Like, we're not going to just throw it off the cliff and never get back there. Like, I will be bringing it up again. Like, this year in the select board, I said, well, I want to go through all the policies and stuff like that, and I want to make sure they're all up to date because some of them haven't been touched for 10, 15 years. Like, let's look at it. It might be one page issue, it might be 25 pages, but let's get them all up to date. And I think we got through half of them. It's just there's so much going on in the town right now. You got to kind of pick and choose what's priority, but so where we are with that.
Okay. Now, to be honest, I'm a little confused about my time clock up here. I think we're down to about 5 minutes or so. And maybe Josh can tell me if I'm correct about that. I guess down to about 5 minutes. An issue, I haven't seen much local reaction, but Northwest State Correctional Facility, I guess the state is now looking at a component, even maybe on a temporary basis, of a kind of a juvenile offenders facility there, or component to it, which is interesting because that's how what's become the state's most hardcore prisons started out long ago. You hearing much hearing much about that? I guess the state was hoping to. There's a place in Newberry, an existing facility, and it sounds like the state's running into a lot of opposition about doing that there? Are you hearing much about the local angle of this?
I haven't heard too much outside of our meetings, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, you
So
know,
you
again,
you did get some information.
oh, yeah, we get quite a bit of information, but I'll say we've had 2 meetings, and the second one, in terms of the location of the building, was very different. And so that's one thing that I know I asked about in our meeting, and that, and again, maybe this is as a former school teacher, in knowing teachers who used to work at Woodside, when I went to college with at UVM, and actually knowing some now adults who went and spent time at Woodside also. It's necessary. It unfortunately, it's necessary, and it's something that we have to have. My concern was, and other people brought up about, should there be fences around it to keep basically juveniles from escaping. But my concern is that it's going to be right on the front lawn, essentially, of the existing maximum security prison. Again, way back in the day when I used to work for the recreation department, we used to drive our tractors down there and take care of the ponds that are down there for the water treatment area. You can hear people in the yard. You can hear the inmates sometimes yelling. You can hear them. And when Dr. Chen came, he said one of their requirements is that the juveniles there would not be able to see the prison, nor would they be able to hear anything from the prison. And
You're not
I'm not
necessarily buying that.
I'm not convinced that that would be the case. And I'm just worried about kids. If we're trying to do a Scared Straight program, it's probably in a perfect spot. But if we're not, then I'm not sure that's the best spot. That's how I feel about it.
Jonathan, some concern about that, or?
It's just the location. Just like Bryan said, the location was a little different than I thought from the first meeting. Ultimately, you know, it'd be nice if we could use that as a leverage tool for the town to get maybe a little sun, maybe finish an intersection, maybe take over the state road from Lake Street all the way to Black Bridge. I mean, that would be my goal. What I don't want to do is the state ends up just putting it there and then doesn't give us a little something for it, you know. So we're remaining open, you know. We gave them some suggestions. I think they're going to come back to us with a few more options. But ultimately, they got to go to the review board or zoning, and then probably the review board. But I'm for it.
Yeah. Down to under 2 minutes. Again, town meeting not far away, Tuesday, March 7th, and town residents, registered voters should be getting or should have already gotten their ballots by now. But boy, what a short warning. I've never seen such a short warning, but the main warning item is obviously the budget, the almost $6.2 million budget. But again, you feel the town's in pretty good shape, moving in the right direction?
Yeah, I think so. A few meetings back, we approved 3 sidewalk projects. So we're going to put, I believe it's $125,000 into a sidewalk fund for 5 years to fund these 3 projects. They are Route 7 South from Harbor View to like the Econo Lodge, I think, right around in there.
Yeah, right to the city-town line.
Right to the city-town line, which will get kids from Harbor View. And then I think it goes from Harbor View to Bayview is another section.
Yeah,
And
I
then
forget the name of the
something
road
like
there,
that.
Up where, Laureate
And
is,
then,
yep.
and then we have the sidewalk that connects basically from like the marina, because Chuck already has this sidewalk in across his properties to the new town hall. So, you know, we talked about putting it as an article, but we're like, well, we don't have to get a vote to do that, so we did it as the select board, you know, because you always get a few people that want the sidewalk, but they won't vote for it, or, you know what I mean? So we're just like, so I said it in the meeting. I said either we're gonna do something about sidewalks and start doing them, or we're done talking about them. Like, we've talked for sidewalks for how many years? But I think doing these 3 will open other, you know, residents up. They're like, oh, this is good. So if we do have to put a bigger one in, which will require a vote, we can get support.
Right. Again, town meeting, I'll give you the last word, Bryan, but hoping for a good turnout. Should get a pretty good turnout, but again, you encourage people to participate, vote, but you feel like town's in pretty good shape, and you're hoping for support for the articles, obviously.
I hope so. I mean, as we talked about with the budget before, it's going to take care of some things that we already have on there that we need to raise money for anyway. It's just going to fund the police agreement. In terms of participation, I mean, I don't know if we're the only one in the area, but we're one of the few, right, that's going to mail out ballots to everybody.
So. Yeah.
And there's always concerns with that. And we did ask a lot of questions to Anna Borden as well. If there's any, extra ballots coming in, if there are a lot of complaints from people, and it seems like it's the rolls are pretty tight. And by mailing them out, it's proven it increases participation.
Yeah.
And I think the more people that can get those and vote, by sending them to people's homes, not only does it increase the turnout, but it does allow more people whom I've heard, who get their ballot and sit down at the dining room table and maybe have a computer and maybe have a laptop and maybe actually look up some of the items or look up some of the candidates instead of just going in and voting, which I think helps, right?
Anyway, we'll call them. I think hopefully there will be a good turnout. But yeah, with the ballots being mailed, should be a fairly decent turnout. Anyway, so again, town meeting day not far away. Thanks to Bryan DesLauriers, the vice chair of the St. Albans Town Selectboard.
Thanks for having me.
Jonathan Giroux, the chair. And again, Jonathan is in one of the two contests. Jonathan Giroux being challenged by David McWilliams, a former selectman, for a 3-year term. The other contest, Brendan Deso, select board member, former chair, being challenged by David Bray for a 2-year term. And again, an almost $6.2 million proposed budget, the big item for St. Albans Town voters. Thanks for watching us here on Northwest Access TV. Thanks to producer Josh, and we'll see you next time. I'm Richard Cowperthwait. See ya.